Well, divide my answer into two categories. What's been happening within the district and what's been happening outside the district. Within the district, we just had Texas Education Agency conduct an audit of all our academic programs and the students and teachers that we serve. And the good news I'm happy to report is that they're very complimentary about the progress they saw in professional development for our teachers, for the student support that we provide in the classroom, and the programs and strides that we've made in serving particularly our challenged learner population. So we're excited about that, and we await the final report. Meanwhile, in the last year, more specifically in the last year, we've instituted our own internal accountability system set of measurements. The STAR test is the latest version of the state standardized test. However, it's come under criticism statewide, even from the schools that we would like to point to and say, we'd like to be more like them. The scores have been relatively stagnant, so they haven't been a very good indicator of whether you're making any progress, or are you making progress to help those in the classroom and to help our students achieve. So the district identified their own internal set of standards. It's a whole wide measure of standards. Yes, those standards include the STAR testing results, but also includes other things like student attendance. Children can't learn if they're not attending. We need to increase our student population attendance each and every day. The early reading indicators, whether our children needing reading intervention, are those numbers going down or are they going up? A variety of other measures like student graduation, participation and successful completion of dual credit, AP scores, and so forth. And I'm happy to report on the early returns on those. The results are available. We're making progress in all those areas, so we're excited about that. Also, we had previously created and are currently still implementing and getting the benefits from our Excellence in Teaching model. This is our own homegrown district-created program that was created by our master teachers in the district. You know, teachers, we are so grateful for their work and effort, but sometimes they can be a little resistant to change. And if you can have something that's created by those that they respect within the district that's homegrown, it's more widely accepted and more quickly accepted. And the Excellence in Teaching model helps our teachers plan a lesson, how to teach the lesson, how to evaluate the results of those lessons, and how to collaborate with others on continual improvement and monitoring the test scores and the results and getting feedback and continuing to tweak that teaching model. So we're excited about that program that's continuing to show real progress and real improvement. Also, this past school year on 18 campuses, we instituted professional learning communities. It's a fancy word for team teaching, a team teaching concept where we've allocated time within the school day and opportunities for teachers at the classroom level, subject area level, to communicate with each other, compare notes, assess how their lesson plans are going, whether the students are learning the material, and if they're not, to figure out why. And if teacher A is doing something that's showing better progress, she can communicate with teacher B who's not showing the progress, and they can collaborate. Something's on 18 of our campuses, and we're going to phase that in on future campuses. That's been a very successful classroom, peer-based method in improving academic performance and support in the classroom. Also, the data component of that is Lead Forward. It's a program that we instituted this year that's available on all campuses for all teachers, which allows them to utilize the data on the test scores, whether it be standardized or the district tests and so forth, that can allow them to more specifically evaluate whether the students are getting it, why they're not getting it, what areas they're not getting it, in an effort to, again, collaborate with each other and then figure out how they can do better. So we're excited about those. Those are just some of the examples within the district that we're doing. Outside the district is the one that you'll hear more about today, and that is we've been working with the very generous members of our community, both business and nonprofit and foundations, and examining what programs work in communities. What we've learned is that there are a lot of successes, but there are a lot of failures. And if there were a single blueprint, a single way of doing things, every community would be utilizing it. What we found is that there's no single blueprint. There's no single silver bullet. And I think maybe Chris told us this, there are some silver buckshot though that you can employ. And what we found is that we've taken this past year to study those efforts. There are various alternatives you can choose from. And the one that we've collaboratively agreed upon is the collective impact model. The collective impact model we found looks like it has the best chance for success. We'll talk more about it here throughout this program. But it involves the community, the existing assets of the community, and has them all agree on a common agenda, working together to improve the performance of education and get everyone involved. Parents, nonprofits, communities of faith, all working together. And we think in Midland, Texas, that is absolutely the best way that we can improve it because of all the existing assets we have in this community. The can-do spirit, the charitable spirit, the existing organizations that want to help and have been helping. If we can all identify a common set of agenda, get on the same page, hold each other accountable for the results, much like that teacher collaboration. If one nonprofit is doing something that helps improve student performance and another one's trying to do the same thing but not doing it as well, we can have them communicate in the same direction. So we're excited about the potential. It takes a while to get everybody on the same page, but we're on the same page and we have launched and we couldn't be more excited about the potential.
Thank you, Rick. Given the fact that he's an attorney, that's a pretty quick summary of the past year, so greatly appreciated, Rick, on that, but very necessary in order for us to know what we're coming into today. Over the past several weeks, we've actually begun our public education meetings. We've had 4 already to date, and obviously we're up here today because we know that MISD is in need of improvement. So I'd like to ask each one of you, just in starting off the conversation, what do each of you see right now as being the one single biggest challenge that we're facing right now, either as MISD or where we are currently? I'll start with Mark.
Thank you, Laura. I think the things that will get the greatest amount of comment in the community around the state are probably the STAR test and state funding issues. Those are issues that we all have to deal with, and it's certainly a reality we're going to have to continue to deal with until we see some legislative change on those issues. But when I think about the issues and the challenges that we have here and how best to address them, I go to 2 particular things. One is parental involvement, and the other is recruiting and retaining great educators in our community. I was a classroom teacher for 10 years, and I think it's a safe guess to say that if our district had the choice between eliminating state testing and rearranging funding so that they had all the resources they need, or having a situation where Midland came forward and said, we're going to have 100% participation from our parents, they're going to be involved and committed to the success of the school district, it might be a tough challenge because it's been a challenge to deal with the funding issues, but I think they would choose that high level of parental involvement. The other issue is recruiting and retaining great teachers. That is a unique challenge that we have in our area. If you manage a business, you know how difficult it can be to recruit people to Midland, Texas. The standing joke is often that you bring the spouse in at night so they don't see what the terrain looks like, and then you let them fall in love with the people and the community itself. We know we have a great community. We're looking now for ways to recruit and engage great teachers, and a big piece of that is excellent professional development. Just as every business invests in their people through ongoing continuing education, making sure they have the best folks possible, we need to do that with our teachers. We need to invest in them.
Thank you, Mark. Rick? Oh, Chris, you're going to do with this? Okay, Chris.
So, it's an interesting challenge, right? All of us probably are aware of really great things that are happening in your community right now, whether they be at nonprofits, organizations across the city, whether they be in our faith-based communities, other programs. So if all of these great things are happening, then why would we not expect all of our scores to be improving, right? To be doing better than where we're at. And I think one of the challenges is that while we can all point to different things in our community that are doing a great job and are getting very good outcomes for students, it doesn't ever seem to sort of add up to a critical mass that actually moves the needle forward in a significant way. And I would echo, I think, some of the points that have already been made. The need for greater parental involvement is key. But how do we go about doing that, right? Sure, plenty of teachers and plenty of the school administrators say our door's open, people can come anytime they want. But how do we as a community? You don't say, my neighbors aren't coming to visit me, they know I'm home, they can come anytime they want. You gotta go out and you gotta actually invite people, right? You've got to set the table for them. You've got to make it accessible for folks if you really want to be in relationship with them. I know this is about the state of education, but it is about the state of Midland, right? There are a lot of things that impact your community, I would argue, biasly obviously, but I would argue that none is more important than your educational system. And this is not just MISD. This is MISD, it is Midland College, it is your four-year institutions. It is that whole pipeline of what we need to be working on to ensure that every young man and woman that grows up here, that builds the relationships that are here, has the very best educational experience and can come back and get great jobs here, right? They can build their families here. They can raise their children here. That's what we want to get. So great parental involvement is key, but it's how do we go about doing it? Teachers are key, as Mark already shared. And it is hard to get teachers. We've been unearthing the various initiatives and the various programs that the school district has been putting in place to try to get out there and recruit and retain the great teachers we have that bring new teachers in, whether they be novice teachers who are just graduating with teacher degrees, whether they be veteran teachers that we go and poach from other communities. But it's important to bring in that great talent. But all of these individual things, I guess what I would say, the biggest thing is you need one common vision for this work, right? You need what you as a community are currently doing is not to keep saying, we've got a great initiative here, we've got a great initiative here, here's an area of need, let's all go help support that. What you need is some coordination and alignment. Improving education is not some major mystery. It has been done in other places. It will happen in Midland, but we need everybody aligned and supporting that same work. And that means sometimes that we have to die a little bit to our own egos, to our own ideas of, well, if they would only focus on this, or if they would only focus on this program, that would make the difference. The reality is you have a very diverse community, and to me that diversity is filled with assets. We are not being good users of the assets that are in your community right now. We need to maximize those so that they're all getting us the outcomes that we want. The district is working hard, the teachers are working hard, but if we're not getting those outcomes, we need to figure out why is that not happening and what can we all do to support the work to move it forward.
Great, thank you, Chris. Greg?
I'm confident we can meet the challenge, but I think the greatest challenge is that community engagement. I'm very gratified about the response we received the last 2 weeks about community interest. I think the biggest challenge will be moving forward and actually getting community engagement on the same page. We have to overcome what I was guilty of on both sides of the equation. When I was a parent with 3 children in the school system, I viewed academic performance district-wide as a them problem. That was an MISD only problem. I was only responsible for taking care of my 3 children, making sure that education was a priority for them as best I could, with the challenges that 3 of them presented in all different ways. But it was a them problem. an MISD only problem. When I became a parent, when I became a board member, it was an us problem. It was the school board members, administrators, and teachers. It was all on us. And what I've come to realize is that I was wrong on both accounts. It's a we problem. It's a we challenge. It's going to be a we solution in terms of parents, the district, and more importantly, the entire community working together. The greatest challenge will be to make sure that we do engage the community, that everybody does get on that same page, and that we can achieve the results that we all desperately want to have happen here.
Great, thank you, Rick. Mark, this one is addressed for you. We've always seen Abel Hanger always have such a strong commitment to education. You all have been involved in so many different initiatives. But generally, it's tended to be more on the indirect side, from a supporting of organizations through your grants. But you're the first president of Educate Midland, and you have spent tons of times coordinating all of these programs, all of these events that are happening. So we're really seeing a shift from Abel Hanger's perspective, from being involvement from being more indirect to being more direct. Why has that changed? Why are you all taking such a lead role in that?
Laura, I can tell you without reservation that this is the #1 priority for the Abel Hanger Foundation. And I think that I can speak for the two partners who are most engaged with us in this project, the Henry Foundation and the Scarborough Foundation. It is very much a top priority for them as well. This isn't so much of a departure from our direct work as you might have thought. In '86, during the first bust, the Abel Hanger Foundation launched the Legacy Scholarship Program. We've had SIP, Students in Philanthropy, that program going on for about 20 years in the community to cultivate and develop philanthropists and volunteers in the community. And Midland Shared Spaces is the most recent example of that direct activity. We, along with a lot of help from a lot of our friends, were able to make that happen.
And so to follow up with it, you talked about the other two foundations as well, so you feel like you guys, all three of you all are all in during this process.
We are, and you're going to ask in a minute, I know, a little bit about the funding for this project, so I won't hit on that yet. But we are all in. The three foundations that I mentioned have made early commitments to the project. We're just at the point where we're ready to begin to court some of our other funders in the local area to support. And I think that support is really going to come more in the role of helping to fund initiatives that we identify to help improve academic performance. The three foundations mentioned thus far have stepped up to support the backbone organization, Educate Midland.
Educate Texas is housed in Foundation. We are part of it. And I think we are seeing, as Mark shared, foundations who have always wanted to use their assets and their resources to help support and promote different ideas. Take a hard look at what is it that we do well, what is it that we are causing problems. And oftentimes, and I won't speak to the three foundations that are here because I don't know well enough, but oftentimes in philanthropy, we actually caused a lot of problems, right? Because we said, we've got this pool of money, anybody needs things, and you have 100+ different folks who all write nice little proposals to you and say, we need help with this, we need help with this, and they seem to have a good program, they seem to be helping the right population of people that we want to help, and so we write checks to them and say, go off and do good work. But what we're doing is actually just spreading more of the resources and more of the work and just fragmenting any type of coherent alignment of actual activities. And so not just here, where you see these three foundations who come aligned, but you're seeing across the philanthropic world, more and more folks not just saying we want to do more than just write a check, because that's important, but that's not enough. But we also want to help create greater alignments. We want to, even if people are doing different things, we want to make sure that we're measuring the impact of those things in a very similar way. And I think that's a big shift for foundations. That is not the way we've normally acted. I would say the other big shift for foundations in the work is often he who has the biggest checkbook gets to dictate what goes on, right? And too often foundations, we come in and said, well, we'll help you with that, but we know a better way. We'll tell you, and we'll write a check for you to do what we think. And I think what we have seen here, and we see in other parts of the country, is an openness and a willingness to learn and to do more research on not just individual programs, but what systemically is going to make a difference. If people have put their hard-earned resources and money into wanting to help the community, what's not going to help little bits and pieces of the community, but what can actually help the community as a whole? And that's a very different approach. None of us that are up here have the entire solution for how to make this difference. But us working together, being open to, maybe it's not my way, maybe it's not your way, maybe it's hybrid something, will allow us to come together as a community. So it's important, especially for foundations, and I think you have a great example of that here, that if they're calling the community to come together and to rally and to work, they need to be able to do that themselves also and set the model and the lead and the example of that. And I think you've got that here, which is a great testament to what you will hopefully be able to accomplish moving forward.
Great. So what you're also talking about is kind of breaking down that silo effect that we've so often been talking about, where everybody's just focused on the one thing that they do instead of sharing their resources together to really, as a group, move forward. Well, Chris, you sort of introduced a little bit about Educate Texas and the part that you guys are part of the foundation that you're part of. But can you just give us just a little bit more of an overview of Educate Texas? Because you all are so integral to this part and leading us through this. Just give us an idea of what you guys have been doing in some of the other communities that you all have been involved in.
You bet. Educate Texas was started about 12 years ago. The state of Texas, the Texas Education Agency at the time, was presented with an opportunity by some national funders to really invest some major money into the state to improve outcomes for secondary students. And imagine that these foundations didn't believe that TEA would necessarily be a good steward of their dollars, and said, we want to help, but we don't want to give you the whole check because you might not do exactly what we want you to do. So they decided to create a standalone entity. And I always say we have sort of 1 foot in and 1 foot out. We know all your business. We know where all the dirty laundry is. We know where all the bodies are buried, but we're not there to throw you under the bus. We're there to ask the hard questions, to push you to think differently, to act differently, most importantly. And so when we were first established, we worked across the state to set up these networks of new innovative schools. Early college high schools, which you have one. We were a part of bringing early college to Midland. STEM academies across the state. We work with a number of the larger charter providers across the state to help develop their backbone, their back office supports to be able to expand and scale across the state. But sort of 5 years into that, we also saw that we needed to evolve and change with the time. And so right now, Educate Texas works across a number of different areas, again with the mission to serve the entire state, but we focus on 4 key areas. The first is around innovative school models. So in addition to early college and STEM academies, which we've helped to support more than 250 in the state, we are also looking at blended learning models, which is just a fancy term for saying schools that are heavily based with the use of technology and using technology as a lever to help improve outcomes for students and sort of personalized learning more. We have also looked at how do we create schools that are competency-based. So instead of your time in class is measured in seat time, a semester and step, there are particular competencies that once you learn them, if it takes you 3 weeks to learn them, then you move on to the next concept after the 3rd week. If it takes you 2 weeks to learn them, you move on after that, right? And you can get sort of micro-credentials and micro-badges to show that you're making progress. None of these models by themselves are going to fix everything. But they are to push new ideas, new ways of teaching to help work for the majority of students across our state. So that's one area. The second area that we focus is on effective teaching. How do we help create policies and procedures across the state, tools, resources that will improve the art of teaching? And so there are a number of things that we do in that bucket of work. Some of it based in some of the schools that I mentioned to you already, but others in other districts that are just looking to align HR systems, that are looking to align their evaluation systems and their compensation systems to really focus on what does great teaching look like, how do we get more of that to take place within our schools. The third area is around post-secondary, higher education, kids going to college. We originally started this work about getting kids college ready and getting more students into higher education and having that as an option. But what is often not recognized or known is that the outcomes in higher education are actually much worse than they are in K-12. Now, oftentimes we say, they're adults now, they make their own choices and things like that. But in the end, those are still our tax dollars that are being utilized in tuition. And if you've seen anything in the paper over the last year around defaults, around student loans, all of this has an impact on our economy, right? Because we don't have the educated workforce that we need. Now, many people will say, well, not every kid is going to go to college. That's very true. But right now, if you look at what are the skills that are needed to enter into a middle trades job, they are the same types of skills that you would need if you were to go to college. So whether you choose to go to college or not, which should be an option, you still need to be equally prepared for both of those options. And so that's an important part. And then the fourth area that we focus on is this. How do we create greater civic engagement? How do we create communities who are all want to focus on the same thing, but for some reason don't always, sometimes they speak past each other, not with each other. And so we've worked in a number of communities across the state, Dallas being one, with the Dallas Commit Initiative, in the Rio Grande Valley, which encompasses 4 counties down in South Texas, with RGB Focus. We're working for East Texas in Tyler, and then we are getting right working with you guys, right? And we're doing this work here. We also, in addition to those communities where we directly support, we provide statewide support for collective impact initiatives that we're not necessarily leading. So there's a collective impact initiative in Austin, there's one in Houston, there are in other parts of the state, there's been one in Waco, up in Amarillo. So we provide support to all of those communities by bringing together and learning from one another. So those are the main areas that Educate Texas works on.
So you alluded to collective impact, and we're all, I'm assuming, relatively new to this process, and again, looking for your guidance under this. So what do we need to be aware of as far as the challenges? We already know, and probably every single one of you sitting out there realizes that this room does not represent the demographics of Midland, especially the ones that were shown up on the screen. So I'm assuming that that's one of our largest challenges, is how we actually make this a fair representation of Midland's true demographics. So what do we need to be aware of? And then also I want to open it up to Rick and Mark for their thoughts about that as well.
You bet. Laura had on the video that was presented earlier, there are sort of 5 key components, and I'm not going to go over them with you all, but I would say that anytime you are going to bring your community together on things, you need to get very clear about what the end goal is. What are we really focusing on? And we all need to understand it. We all need to make sure that we can clearly articulate what that is, and that we are not thrown off by, well, it kind of looks like this, but it's not exactly that. You heard in my bio one of the great experiences that I had in working in Boston, and a lot of this work was done before I arrived in Boston, so by no means is it just because of the work that I did there. But we had a very clearly aligned focus in Boston Public Schools. I would often tell people that in the Boston Public Schools, everybody was clear on what the goal was. Some people were running towards it, some people were walking towards it, some people were just standing there looking at it, but at least everybody was facing in the same direction. And that is enormous.